Hi, Year 8. So today we are moving into slightly uncharted territory with a lesson on comparison skills and technique. The reason why we're doing this is because it's a fundamental part of your GCSE skill set. So it's about kind of developing those skills early so that when you get into year 10 and 11, you've already kind of developed some of the key things we need to be able to do with poetry. So it's quite a straightforward objective today. We're going to develop better comparison skills and technique. Okay, that's it. Simple. Nothing else other than that. Everything we're doing today is geared towards helping this objective be met. So I'm going to start us off with not looking at poems. Okay, so here we have two images of animals, an elephant and a polar bear. And I would like you to think of one thing that makes them different and one thing that makes them similar. Okay, just pause the video here while you have a little think about that. You can jot them down if you want to. And when you're ready, you can move on. So you could probably spot some obvious differences between the two animals, and you might even know some similarities. And this is because you probably know something about elephants and polar bears, and they're really easy to tell apart. When you compare poems, you're using exactly the same skills. The difference is the knowledge and understanding that you have might be less secure. So the key element when comparing poems is being confident that you know and understand what you are comparing, just like you would be if you're going to compare an elephant to a polar bear. So when you are comparing these two animals, for example, you also need to make sure that you are comparing relevant elements. So you could compare, for example, in these two images, the animals based on size. You could compare how big they are. You could compare the color of the animals. You could compare the habitat they live in. You could compare the diet that they might eat or how they survive in the wild. So as long as you're comparing both animals on the same focus, it would be like a fair comparison. You could also compare these animals based on the actual photographs that have been taken of them. For example, both these images, these photographs, are portraits. They use long shots. They've got a similar kind of composition in the shots. So we've got a foreground, we've got the animal themselves, and then the background. So what I'm trying to draw your attention to is that these images can be compared in at least two ways. First is what the images are actually about, elephant or polar bear. And the second is the way in which the photographer has created the photographs. So when we move on to comparing poems, we need to make sure that when we compare poems, we're also comparing relevant elements. So what that means is we should compare poems based on the stories they tell, or the themes they explore, or the tone that they have, and the emotions they express. Um, and on top of that, or in addition to that, you can also compare how the poems based on their use of language, or their use of form, or their use of structure. So poems, just like those pictures of the animals, can be compared in two ways. One is what the poem is about, and the second way is how the poet has written them. So before you write a comparison paragraph, you need to have a question. And the question will have a specific focus, which should be the main idea in your answer. So if the question was, photographers take pictures of wild animals showing them in a natural habitat, compare how animals are suited to the environment they live in, your answer would have to compare how each animal is suited to their habitat, and this would include you picking out key details that show how each is able to survive. And you might also comment on the differences between the animals and how they survive. So you could look at something they have in common, or you might spot the things that make them different. So here's a go. Here we have a chance to have a go at writing a comparison paragraph. First of all, the question. Photographers take pictures of wild animals, showing them in their natural habitats. Compare how animals are suited to the environment they live in. So we have got here an elephant and a polar bear, and I would like you to focus here on kind of how they are able to both survive in extreme temperatures. What has each animal got that makes them suitable to the habitat they live in? Okay, you might think, well, um, the elephant lives in a very hot environment, and the elephant has got large ears, which it helps keep it cool. If you didn't know, the ears can obviously work as like fans to blow or waft air over the elephant's body. but also because the skin is so thin on the ears, it allows the blood that flows in the ears and in the skin to kind of heat to escape. And because of a large surface area, it means that the blood cools down very quickly. Whereas with the polar bear, as you can see, has got a freezing cold environment, and the polar bear has got fur to keep it warm. So your task now is to write a comparison paragraph about how each of these animals are suited the temperature of their environment. Okay, so pause the video when you're ready to start, and then obviously write your paragraph and then press play when you're finished so you can see what happens next. So here's what I did in my paragraph. I've put both images of animals show they suit the temperature of their natural habitat. The first image shows the elephant surrounded by a hot, dry, and dusty environment. The elephant has big ears to help cool its blood in such heat. Similarly, the polar bear is also in a harsh environment. However, for the polar bear, the location is freezing cold and icy, so it has to keep warm. It has thick fur all over its body, which helps it to survive the bitter cold. It is clear that both animals are suited to the habitat they live in. So here is my paragraph again, but this time I've color coded it with highlighters which refer to different elements of the paragraph and why it makes it a successful paragraph. So because it's a comparison paragraph, there needs to be comparing words, and that's been highlighted in yellow. And you can see I've got 4 comparing words. I've used the word both twice, similarly once, and however is the third one. Okay, so that's how I've constructed it, with a bit of compare and contrast. However helps me go into a contrast direction. I've got my grey highlighter to indicate where I have had a very clear focus of comparison for this paragraph. This paragraph is about temperature, okay, of the environment they live in. So everything in grey is a reference or a clear focus on the idea of temperature. The blue is a reference to the question, and how the question looks at the idea of being suited to the environment they live in. So I've used that in the first sentence and in the last sentence to make sure that my paragraph starts and ends by answering the question. In pink, I have got evidence from the photographs. So for the elephant, I've referenced the big ears, and for the polar bear, I've referenced thick fur. And then after each piece of evidence, I've followed that up with an explanation of what that particular feature does. So the ears keep the elephant's blood cool, and the fur helps the polar bear survive in the bitter cold. So that, in terms of paragraph on comparison, has got everything in it that makes it successful and makes it useful. So your task now is to basically do exactly the same as what I did for my task, but with your piece of writing about the polar bear and the elephant. You can use 5 different colours, or you can use a kind of a key, so you can put numbers next to the things. Basically check for comparing words, check that your paragraph has got a very clear topic, check that there's references to the question, check you've got evidence, and check you've got clear explanations. Pause the video here while you go through your piece of work, checking that you've got those 5 vital ingredients. So you're right. We're at the end of the lesson, or the video lesson now, and what I hope you realised is that there are 5 key ingredients in a comparison paragraph. You need to make sure you have comparing words to make the paragraph into a comparison paragraph. You need to have a clear focus that you're comparing. You need to have a reference to the question, some detailed evidence, and clear explanations. If you manage to get all those 5 things in your poetry comparison paragraphs, then you're going to get a very good mark. So we're going to pause here now. It's the end of today's lesson. The next time we look at comparison skills, we'll be looking at actual poetry, not polar bears and elephants. You'll be pleased to know. Okay, take care.